Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good day, everyone. We have so far learned about long-run economy. We learned about real economy as well as money and prices in the long run. And just recently, we learned also about the macroeconomics of open economies, also in the long run condition. Now, we study the short-run condition in an economy and how the adjustment occurs from short-run to long-run condition. We begin the study by learning how market works in the short run. More specifically, we will learn about aggregate demand and aggregate supply. In this presentation, we'll talk first about the aggregate demand. Then in the second video, the explanation will be about the aggregate supply. And lastly, in the third video, we will see how contraction in aggregate demand and or in aggregate supply affect the economy. It is a business cycle. All economies must experience the peak and the true condition as well as the recession and the recovery period. However, the length of or the length between recessions in each economy is not predictable. It doesn't have a regular pattern like shown in this diagram. In reality, just like in the two figures here, sorry, the figures are not pretty. I scanned from the book since I haven't got the Indonesian data. Two recessions period in the US economy sometimes occur very close. For instance, recessions once happened in 1970 and then in 1975. Or more closely, recessions that happened in 1980 and 1982. In other occasions, from 1991 to 2001, for instance, for 10 years, the US economy goes without any recession. Not only the irregularity and the unpredictability of the economic fluctuation, from theory and data, we could also easily observe that some variables move in the same direction, while the others move in the opposite direction. GDP, investment and consumption spending, industry production, and personal income usually move together in the same direction. On the other hand, GDP and unemployment rate usually move in the opposite direction. When GDP is low during the recession period, as can be seen in the shaded area here in this figure, unemployment rate will be high. So, what is happening to the economy in the short run? While classical economics is relatively accurate in explaining what happens to the real economic variables in the long run, but as you may recall from our early session, it fails to address the problem during the Great Depression in the US economy. One example of the short-run economic problems. Then, before learning the short-run model, we have to abandon first two of the main assumptions in the classical economic model, which are the money neutrality and classical dichotomy assumption. In the short run, nominal money supply is not neutral to the economy, and neither is price to economic production level. Such nominal variables as money supply, price level, and nominal interest rate do really matter to the economy. They affect the real variables. That is why, in explaining the short-run condition, we will not separate the nominal and the real variables. Hence, there will be no more classical dichotomy. Instead, we build a model that shows the interactions of both nominal and real variables. Central to the economic model here is the interaction between the real GDP, which is of course the real variables, and the aggregate price level, which is the nominal variables. We analyze then the fluctuations in the economy as a whole with the model of AD and AS. Let's now talk about the aggregate demand curve. It shows the quantity of all goods and services demanded in the economy at any given aggregate price level. To understand the market mechanism involving the aggregate demand later on, we have to know at least two things: the shape of the eddy curve, why it is downward sloping, and the shift of the eddy curve, or what factors that could shift the curve. The explanation lies from the eddy equation. Remember the expenditure approach of measuring GDP. Y is expressed like this. The spending here, C, I, G, and and X are all the demands for goods and services in the economy. Therefore, this equation is reflecting the aggregate demand equations. Anything happens to the elements, whether to C, I, G, or an X, will affect the AD, or the demand for Y. Okay, please focus here. You know, change in component of AD may be due to change in price or change in non-price factors. It is so similar to discussing demand curve in microeconomics. So when change in C, I, G, or NX is due to change in the aggregate price level, it will only shape the AD curve. There will be just movement along the AD curve. Suppose that aggregate price increases. Assuming that G is fixed by the government, what will happen to our AD elements? Well, price increase will reduce C, I, and NX from the following explanations. First, consumption declines because price increase makes consumers less wealthier. That is why the effect is called the wealth effect. Investment, secondly, will decline too. With higher price level, demand for money will be higher to facilitate the higher transaction value. And in money market, higher demand for money means a shift of MD to the right, resulting in higher interest rate. With higher interest rate, the cost of borrowing for doing investment will be high, thus reducing the investment level, and that's why the effect is called the interest rate effect. Number three, lastly, the net export will also decline because the resulting higher interest rate from money market attracts more capital inflow, not outflow. With less NCO, supply of our currency, remember from our last discussion, will be less too. Then real exchange rate will be higher, making domestic goods more expensive, thus lowering net export. In short, since the overall price increase has lowered all the AD elements, the aggregate demand will be lower. Obviously, we observe here the negative correlation between price and the aggregate demand. That is why the shape of AD curve is downward sloping. And since AD curve is showing correlation between P and Y or AD, whenever P changes, there will be movement along the AD curve. Now, how if the change in C, I, G, or NX is due to change in non-price factors? Certain event or certain policy may change C, I, G, or NX. And the answer is simple. The AD, as a consequence, will be shifting. If there is, for instance, export promotion policy, NX will increase, increasing the AD, hence shifting the AD curve to the right. Currently, government may spend more to overcome the social impact of corona. What will happen? The increase of G will also increase AD at any given price, so AD curve will again shift to the right. Next, how if there is riot or political instability that scares investors? In this case, investment will be lower, reducing AD, thus shifting the AD curve to the left. What if something happens to money market? Maybe because change in money demand or money supply? The impact will be similar. As long as the change is not due to price change, the resulting new interest rate equilibrium will affect investment, then AD, and again shifting the AD curve. Okay, I stop here. Hope you understand all the explanations. We have discussed about the aggregate demand. In my next presentation, the continuation, will be talking about the aggregate supply. Thank you for your attention and please watch the next presentation of mine. See you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.